Tae-Soong kept his eyes on his datapad as he walked through the crowded corridor of Tertius Prime Station. He had learned over the past 6 months that looking down was the best way to avoid unwanted conversations. More importantly, it was the best way to avoid her. The Galactic Coalition Academy was massive, home to over 10,000 students from 43 different species. Tae-Soong was one of only 12 humans in the entire facility. This made him easy to spot, easy to find, and unfortunately for him, easy to track. He turned left into the engineering wing, his steps quick and purposeful. The corridor here was darker, lined with laboratories where students worked on projects that would shape the future of space travel. Tae-Soong loved this place. Here, he could lose himself in equations and engine designs. Here, he could pretend he was just another student trying to pass his exams. There you are. Ta-Zung's heart sank. He knew that voice. Everyone at the academy knew that voice. He stopped walking and slowly turned around. Princess Hay-Rin of the Velthari Empire stood 10 feet away from him. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like pearl under the station's artificial lights. Her eyes were large and completely silver, without pupils or irises. The Velthari didn't need them. They could see in ways humans couldn't even imagine. "Princess," Tae-Soong said, keeping his voice neutral. He gave a small bow, just enough to be polite. "You've been avoiding me again," Hay-Rin said. She took a step closer. "For 6 months now, you've made it your mission to stay as far from me as possible." "I've been busy with my studies," Tae-Soong replied. "The engineering program is very demanding." "Don't lie to me, Tae-Soong." Hay-Rin's voice was soft but firm. "I can sense emotions, remember? Right now, you're anxious, uncomfortable, and you're calculating how quickly you can escape this conversation." Tae-Soong said nothing. She was right, of course. The Velthari were empaths. They could read feelings like humans read books. "I don't understand," Hay-Rin continued. "I've tried to be friendly. I've invited you to cultural events, to study sessions, even to simple meals. You refuse everything. Other students would kill for such opportunities. The Draken twins actually fought each other last month for a chance to attend one of my family's ceremonies." "I'm not other students," Tae-Soong said quietly. "No, you're not." Hay-Rin moved closer, close enough that Tae-Soong had to tilt his head back to look at her face. "You're human, the newest species to join the coalition. The species everyone thought would be grateful for our guidance. Yet here you are, treating me like I'm something dangerous." "I need to get to class," Tae-Soong said, trying to step around her. Hay-Rin moved to block his path. It wasn't aggressive, but it was clear. No more excuses. No more running away. "I'm giving you 3 days, Tae-Soong. 3 days to tell me the truth about why you avoid me. If you don't, I'll use my authority to have you transferred back to Earth. The Coalition doesn't need students who can't work with other species." Tae-Soong felt anger flash through him. "Is that a threat, Princess?" "It's a promise," Hay-Rin said. Her silver eyes seemed to glow brighter. "I've been patient. I've been kind. But I'm also royalty of the Velthari Empire, and I deserve respect. 3 days, Tae-Soong. Give me the truth, or go home." She turned and walked away, her long robes flowing behind her like water. 2 Velthari guards, who had been waiting at the end of the corridor, fell into step behind her. They gave Tae-Soong cold looks as they passed. Tae-Soong stood alone in the corridor, his hands shaking. He gripped his datapad so hard, the edges dug into his palms. 3 days. She had given him 3 days to explain something he could never make her understand. That looked rough. Tae-Soong turned to see Dong-Jun, his roommate, leaning against the laboratory door. Dong-Jun was human too, a physics student with a talent for saying the wrong thing at the right time. You saw that? Tae soon asked. Everyone saw that, Dongjon said, gesturing to the students who were now pretending not to stare. The princess cornering the human who keeps rejecting her. It's better than any drama show. Tae soon walked past him into the laboratory. I'm not rejecting her. I'm just not interested in being her friend. Why not? Dongjun followed him inside. She's literally the most powerful person at this academy. Her family controls half the galaxy. Being friends with her could set up your entire career. I don't want that kind of career, Tae-sung said. He sat down at his workstation and tried to focus on the engine schematic on his screen. You're crazy, Dongjun said, shaking his head. Do you know what the other species say about you? They think you're insulting not just her, but the entire Valthari Empire. Some of them think Earth should apologize for your behavior. Tae-sung's jaw tightened. Earth has nothing to apologize for. Then what's the real reason? Dongjun asked. Come on, Tae-sung. We've been roommates for 6 months. I know you're not stupid. There's something else going on. Tae-sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Do you know what happened 40 years ago? When the Valthari first came to Earth? Sure, Dongjun said. They offered to help us join the galactic community. They wanted to share technology and knowledge. But Earth's government said no. We chose to join on our own terms instead. That's the simple version, Tae-sung said. The version they teach in schools. But it's not the whole truth. What do you mean? Tae-sung pulled up a file on his datapad. My grandfather was there. He was part of the human delegation that met with the Valthari ambassadors. He told me things before he died. Things that never made it into the history books. Dongjun sat down next to him. What kind of things? The Valthari didn't just offer help, Tae-sung said. They offered partnership. They said humans were special, that we had potential, that we could become important members of their empire. They made it sound like an honor. Sounds good to me, Dongjun said. It would have been, Tae-sung replied. Except my grandfather noticed something. He asked the Valthari ambassador to name one species that had accepted their partnership and was still independent. Just one. And? The ambassador couldn't answer. Because there weren't any. Every species that accepted Valthari help eventually became part of their empire. Not through war. Not through conquest. Just through slow, gentle absorption until they forgot they were ever anything else. Dongjun stared at him. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, Tae-sung said. My grandfather spent years researching it. 17 species had accepted Valthari partnership before humans. 17 species that don't exist as independent civilizations anymore. They're all just parts of the Valthari Empire now. And that's why you avoid the princess, Dongjun said slowly. Every time I look at her, I see what humanity almost became, Tae-sung said. I see the smiling face of extinction. That's why I can't be her friend. That's why I'll never be her friend. Dongjun whistled low. You're going to tell her this in 3 days? I don't know, Tae-sung said. But I'm running out of options. Outside the laboratory, the station hummed with life. Thousands of students from dozens of worlds, all learning together, all believing they were building a better future. But Tae-sung knew the truth. Some futures came with a price that was too high to pay. And he would rather fail out of the academy than pay it. Tae-sung couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling, while Dongjun snored in the bed across from him. The conversation with Princess Hee-rin kept playing in his mind like a broken recording. 3 days. He had 3 days to decide between the truth and his future god at 5 in the morning. He gave up trying to sleep. He dressed quietly and left the dormitory. The station was never truly dark, but at this hour, the corridors were empty and peaceful. His footsteps echoed as he walked toward the human section of the academy. Professor Dalneem's office was in the older part of the station, far from the gleaming new facilities where the Velthari students studied. The door was unlocked, as always. The old professor believed that knowledge should never be locked away. Can't sleep either. Dalneem's voice came from the darkness. Taesung stepped inside and found the professor sitting by the window, looking out at the stars. Dalneem was 73 years old, one of the few humans who remembered Earth before first contact with alien species. His hair was completely white, and his hands shook slightly when he moved, but his mind was still sharp. "How did you know I'd come?" Taesung asked. "Because I heard what happened yesterday," Dalneem said. "News travels fast when a princess threatens a student." "Sit down, Taesung. Tell me what's troubling you." Taesung sat in the old chair across from the professor. "She wants to know why I avoid her. She gave me 3 days to explain, or she'd have me sent home." "And you're afraid to tell her the truth," Dalneem said. "It wasn't a question. I'm afraid of what happens if I do," Taesung admitted. "If I tell her about the Velthari Empire's history, about what they really do to species they help, she could do more than send me home. She could make problems for all of Earth." Dalneem was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up slowly and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled out an old physical book, the kind that almost nobody used anymore. "Do you know what this is?" "A book?" Taesung said. "Not just any book. This is a collection of journals written by the people who were there when the Velthari first arrived on Earth. Your grandfather's journal is in here." Dalneem opened the book and showed Taesung pages filled with handwritten notes. Taesung took the book carefully. His grandfather's handwriting was messy but readable. He began to read. The entry was dated May 15th, 2247, the day the Velthari made their offer to Earth. "They arrived with smiles and gifts," his grandfather had written. "They told us we were special. They said humans had something unique, something worth preserving." The other delegates were so excited. Finally, we weren't alone in the universe. Finally, we had friends among the stars. But I couldn't shake this feeling. Something was wrong. Their smiles were too perfect. Their words were too careful. So I asked Ambassador Sua a simple question. "Can you name one species that partnered with the Velthari and is still independent today?" The room went silent. Ambassador Sua looked at me with those silver eyes, and for the first time I saw something behind the kindness. Something cold. She said, "All our partners are happy. All our partners thrive. Why does independence matter when you have everything you need?" That's when I knew. Independence mattered because it was the one thing they would never let us keep. Taesung looked up from the journal. His hands were shaking. "Your grandfather saved humanity that day," Dalneem said quietly. "Because he asked the right question. Because he wasn't blinded by the promise of easy advancement." The other delegates wanted to accept the Velthari offer. They thought he was being paranoid. But he insisted on researching first. What did he find? Taesung asked, though he already knew the answer. "Everything you already suspect," Dalneem said. He found 17 species. 17 civilizations that had accepted Velthari partnership over the past 1,000 years. And he found that every single one of them had disappeared. Not destroyed. Not conquered. Just absorbed. The Velthari would arrive with offers of help. They would share technology, culture, education. They would marry into the ruling families. They would slowly, gently, kindly integrate the species into their empire until there was nothing left of the original culture. The Dravik were warriors once. Now they're soldiers in the Velthari military, and they don't even remember their own battle songs. The Nithril were artists who painted with light. Now they create advertisements for Velthari corporations. The Korthan had a democracy that lasted 3,000 years. Now they have Velthari governors who make all their decisions for them. Tae-Sung felt sick. And nobody knows? The Velthari don't hide it, Dalnim said. They just don't talk about it. They call it integration. They call it progress. They say these species chose this path. And technically, they're right. Every species agreed. Every species thought they were getting a good deal. Until it was too late, Tae-Sung said. Until it was too late, Dalnim agreed. Your grandfather presented his research to the human delegation. It caused chaos. Half the delegates still wanted to accept the Velthari offer. They said Earth couldn't survive without help, that we would fall behind other species, that isolation would doom us. But the other half listened, and they were loud enough to stop the agreement. Earth rejected the Velthari partnership. We chose the hard path. We chose to develop our own technology, make our own mistakes, and stay independent. Tae-Sung closed the journal carefully. The Velthari must have been angry. Surprisingly, no, Dalnim said. They were disappointed, but they didn't push. They said they respected our decision. They even offered to sponsor 12 human students at the Galactic Coalition Academy every year as a gesture of goodwill. That's why you're here. And that's why Princess Hirin is interested in me, Tae-Sung said. The pieces were falling into place. I'm not just another student to her. I'm a symbol. Humans are the only species that ever said no to the Velthari. If she can make friends with me, if she can show that humans and Velthari can work together, it proves that Earth made the wrong choice. Perhaps, Dalnim said. Or perhaps she genuinely wants to be your friend and doesn't understand why you refuse. The Velthari aren't evil, Tae-Sung. That's what makes this so difficult. They truly believe they're helping. They think integration is good for everyone. They don't see what they're taking away. How do I explain that to her? Tae-Sung asked. How do I tell a princess that her entire empire is built on cultural genocide? I don't know if you can, Dalnim said honestly. The Velthari have been doing this for 1,000 years. It's not cruelty to them. It's just the natural order. The strong help the weak. The advanced guide the primitive. In their minds, they're heroes, not conquerors. Tae-Sung stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the Velthari section of the station, beautiful and gleaming. What would you do, Professor? If you were me? Dalnim thought for a long moment. I would tell her the truth. Not because it will change her mind. Not because it will make her understand. But because some truths need to be spoken, even when nobody wants to hear them. Your grandfather spoke the truth 40 years ago, and it saved Earth. Maybe your truth will save something else. Or maybe it will just get me expelled, Tae-Sung said. Maybe, Dalnim agreed. But at least you'll go home, knowing you stood for something that mattered. That's more than most people can say. Tae-Sung stayed in the professor's office until the sun simulators began brightening the station for a new day. They talked about history, about choices, about the price of independence. When Tae-Sung finally left, he had made his decision. He would tell Princess Hirin the truth. All of it. And whatever happened after that would happen. At least he would be able to look at himself in the mirror and know he hadn't betrayed everything his grandfather had fought for. The hard part would be finding the right words to explain how friendship could be a weapon, and kindness could be a trap. Tae-Sung spent the next 2 days preparing. He gathered data, organized files, and rehearsed what he would say. He knew he would only get one chance to explain himself before Princess Hirin either understood or had him removed from the academy forever. On the morning of the 3rd day, he sent a message to her private communication line. It was simple. I'm ready to talk. Meet me in the neutral garden at sunset. Come alone. He wasn't sure she would agree. Asking a princess to go anywhere without her guards was bold, maybe even insulting. But if they were going to have this conversation, it needed to be private. What he had to say couldn't be shared with the Velthari royal guard. To his surprise, she agreed. The neutral garden was one of the most beautiful places on Tertius Prime Station. It was designed to represent nature from 40 different worlds, with plants and water features that shouldn't exist together, but somehow did. Tae-Soong arrived early and found a bench near a tree that looked almost like the ones from Earth. Almost, but not quite. The leaves were the wrong shade of green. Princess Hae-Rin arrived exactly at sunset. She wore simple robes instead of her usual formal dress, and as promised, she was alone. No guards, no attendants. Just her. "You asked me to come alone," she said as she approached. "I hope you appreciate how unusual this is. I haven't been without guards since I was 5 years old." "I appreciate it," Tae-Soong said. He gestured to the bench. "Please, sit." Hae-Rin sat down, keeping a careful distance between them. "I've waited 3 days for this conversation, Tae-Soong. Don't waste my time with more excuses. Tell me the truth. Why do you avoid me?" Tae-Soong took a deep breath. This was it. The moment he had been dreading and preparing for. "Before I answer, I need to ask you something. Do you know how many species have accepted partnership with the Velthari Empire?" Hae-Rin's silver eyes narrowed. "That's your question? That's what you want to discuss?" "Please just answer," Tae-Soong said. "Many species have joined the Empire over the centuries," Hae-Rin said. "I don't know the exact number." "Why does it matter?" 17, Tae-Soong said. He pulled out his data pad and placed it on the bench between them. 17 species accepted Velthari partnership before humans were contacted. I have their names right here. The Dravik, the Nithral, the Korfin, the Silvish, the Mordai. Should I continue? "I know the member species of our empire," Hae-Rin said coldly. "What's your point?" "My point is that they're not partners," Tae-Soong said. "They're not members. They're what's left after the Velthari finished helping them." Hae-Rin stood up. "Careful, Tae-Soong. You're approaching insult." "I'm approaching truth," Tae-Soong said, standing to face her. "Let me ask you another question. Can you name one integrated species that still governs itself? One species that still celebrates its original culture? One species that still speaks its original language as its primary tongue?" Hae-Rin opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She was quiet for a long moment. The integrated species are happy. They thrive within the Empire. They have access to technology and resources they never could have developed alone. "That's not what I asked," Tae-Soong said. "I asked if any of them are still independent. If any of them are still themselves." "They are themselves," Hae-Rin insisted. "Integration doesn't erase identity. It enhances it." Tae-Soong turned on his datapad and projected a holographic image into the air between them. It showed a Dravik warrior from 300 years ago, covered in traditional armor and carrying weapons that glowed with their own power. Then the image changed to show a modern Dravik, wearing Velthari military uniform and carrying Velthari weapons. The Dravik were warriors with a culture that went back 5,000 years, Tae-Soong said. They had battle songs that could last for days. They had honor codes that defined every aspect of their lives. Now they're soldiers in your military. And when I asked one of them to sing a traditional Dravik song last month, he couldn't remember a single word. He apologized and said he could sing me a Velthari military anthem instead. He changed the image. Now it showed the Nithral, artists who had once created paintings with pure light. The old images were breathtaking, colors and shapes that seemed to move and breathe. The new images showed Nithral working in advertising agencies, using their light manipulation abilities to create commercials for Velthari products. The Nethril were artists, Taesung continued. Their light paintings were considered sacred. They spent years on a single piece. Now they work in marketing, and their art is used to sell things. When was the last time you saw a traditional Nethril light painting, Princess? Can you even name a famous Nethril artist from the last century? Rin's face was unreadable. You're cherry-picking examples. Many integrated species maintain their traditions. Do they? Taesung pulled up more data. The Korthan had a democracy that lasted 3,000 years. Now they have Velthari governors. The Silvish had a religion followed by billions. Now their temples are tourist attractions. The Mordai had a written language with characters so complex it took 20 years to learn. Now their children learn Velthari in school, and the old language is classified as a historical curiosity. We don't force anyone to give up their culture, Rin said, but her voice was less certain now. You don't have to force them, Taesung said quietly. That's what makes it so effective. You come with friendship. You offer help. You share technology that makes life easier, medicine that makes people healthier, education that makes children smarter. And in return, all you ask is cooperation, partnership, integration. And slowly, generation by generation, the old ways become inconvenient. Why speak the old language when Velthari is used for all official business? Why practice old traditions when Velthari customs are more accepted in mixed company? Why maintain old governments when Velthari administrators are more efficient? It's not conquest. It's not even cruel. It's just practical. And that's what makes it so dangerous. Rin sat down on the bench again. She looked shaken. You're describing cultural genocide. Yes, Taesung said. Genocide with a smile. Genocide with good intentions. But genocide nonetheless. And that's why I avoid you, Princess. Not because I hate you. Not because I think you're evil. But because every time I look at you, I see the future my grandfather saved us from. I see the face of everything Earth would have lost if we had said yes to your empire. That's not fair, Rin said. Her voice was almost a whisper. I never asked to erase anyone's culture. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I know, Taesung said. He sat down beside her, though he kept his distance. That's what makes this so hard. You're not a villain. You're just a product of your empire. You were raised to believe that integration is good, that the Velthari way is the best way, that helping other species advance is noble. And maybe it is. Maybe the species that joined your empire are happier now. Maybe they don't miss what they lost, because they don't even remember it anymore. But humans remember. We know what happened to the 17 species before us. We know what the Velthari offer really costs. And when your empire came to Earth 40 years ago with the same offer, the same promises, the same smiles, my grandfather asked the one question nobody else thought to ask. What happens to the species that accept your help? And when he couldn't get a good answer, he convinced Earth to say no. We chose isolation over integration. We chose the hard path over the easy one. We chose to stay human, even if it meant struggling alone. Rin was quiet for a long time. The artificial sunset painted the garden in orange and red light. Finally, she spoke. Do you really believe my people have destroyed 17 civilizations? I believe you've absorbed them so completely that they might as well be destroyed, Taesung said. Can you prove me wrong? Can you show me one integrated species that still truly governs itself, still truly maintains its culture, still truly exists as something separate from the Velthari Empire? Rin didn't answer. She stood up and looked out at the garden. I need to think about this, she said finally. This is not a small accusation, Taesung. If what you're saying is true, if even part of it is true, then everything I've been taught about my empire's history is a lie. I know, Taesung said, and I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. But you demanded the truth, and this is it. This is why I can't be your friend. Because friendship with the Velthari is how it starts. And I know how it ends. Heirin turned to look at him. Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the fading light. You have given me a great deal to consider. I won't make any decisions about your future here until I've done my own research. If you're lying, if you're wrong, there will be consequences. I understand, Taesung said. But if you're right, Heirin continued, her voice barely audible, then everything I believed about my people's purpose in the galaxy is wrong. And I don't know which possibility scares me more. She walked away without another word, leaving Taesung alone in the garden as the artificial stars began to appear overhead. He had told her the truth, just as he promised. Now all he could do was wait to see what she would do with it. Princess Heirin didn't sleep after leaving the garden. She returned to her private quarters and dismissed her attendants, claiming she needed time to meditate. But meditation was impossible. Taesung's words kept echoing in her mind, each accusation cutting deeper than the last. She sat at her personal terminal and began to search through the Empire's historical archives. As royalty, she had access to databases that most Velthari never saw. Surely, she thought, Taesung was wrong. Surely there was evidence that integrated species maintained their independence and culture. The first file she opened was about the Dravik. The official record described them as willing partners who recognized the benefits of Velthari guidance. It talked about how the Dravik had struggled with internal conflicts before integration, how their warrior culture had led to endless cycles of violence. The Velthari had brought peace and stability, but as Heirin dug deeper, she found older files, reports from 300 years ago. In them, the Dravik were described differently. They were called proud, fierce, and independent. Their wars were described as ritual combat, carefully controlled and deeply meaningful to their society. The Velthari observers noted that while the Dravik fought often, they rarely killed, and their conflicts actually strengthened their social bonds. Then came the integration protocols, step-by-step instructions for bringing the Dravik into the Empire. Phase 1. Establish friendly relations and cultural exchange. Phase 2. Introduce Velthari education systems. Phase 3. Offer administrative assistance. Phase 4. Implement standardized governance. Phase 5. Full integration. Heirin felt cold as she read. It was all there, planned out like a recipe, and every step was described as helping the Dravik improve themselves. She opened files on the Nithral. The pattern was the same. They had been independent artists with a culture built around light manipulation. The Velthari had arrived offering to share their technology to help the Nithral expand their art to new audiences. Within 2 generations, traditional Nithral art was considered old-fashioned. Within 4 generations, it had nearly disappeared. The Korthan, the Silvish, the Mordai. File after file showed the same pattern: contact, friendship, partnership, integration. And with each integration, another culture slowly faded away. Heirin pulled up the implementation timeline for each species. The Dravik had taken 80 years to fully integrate. The Nithral had taken 60. The fastest integration was the Mordai, at just 40 years. The slowest was the Silvish, who had resisted for nearly 2 centuries before their culture finally dissolved into the Empire. She found records of resistance movements. The Korthan Democratic League had tried to maintain their old government for 90 years after integration began. They had failed. The Nithral Traditional Artists Guild had fought to preserve their sacred art forms. They had failed too. Every species that tried to resist integration eventually gave up, overwhelmed by the practical benefits of accepting. Velthari ways, but the file that truly shook Hayrin was the one labeled Integration Target 18, Humanity. She opened it with trembling hands. The file was 40 years old, created shortly before the Velthari first made contact with Earth. It contained detailed plans for bringing humans into the Empire. Phase 1 had been scheduled to last 20 years. Phase 5 was projected to be complete within 150 years. The file included psychological profiles of humanity, assessment of their strengths and weaknesses, and strategic recommendations for integration. One section was titled Primary Challenges. Hayrin read it with growing horror. Humans exhibit strong tribal identity and resistance to external authority. They value independence highly, even at the cost of practical benefits. Recommend emphasizing individual opportunity over collective integration. Target younger generations through education and cultural exchange. Establish personal relationships with key leaders and influencers. There was a subsection specifically about the Velthari royal family's role in integration. Direct engagement from royal family members has proven effective in previous integrations. Recommend Princess Hayrin, who will be of appropriate age during contact period. Establish relationships with human cultural representatives and students. Personal bonds create emotional investment in integration success. Hayrin closed the file and stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. She felt sick. Zoom had been right. Worse than right. He had been conservative in his accusations. This wasn't just cultural absorption. It was calculated, planned, and executed with precision across 17 different species. And she had been designated as a tool in the 18th attempt. She thought about all the times she had approached Tae-Soon. All the invitations. All the friendly gestures. Had any of it been real? Or had she been unconsciously following the integration protocols she had been raised with since childhood? Hayrin accessed the Academy's communication system and called the one person she trusted to be honest with her. Myung-hee was a Velthari historian, one of her former tutors, and someone who had always encouraged her to question official narratives. The elderly historian's face appeared on the screen. Princess Hayrin. It's very late. Is something wrong? I need you to be honest with me, Hayrin said. Completely honest, regardless of who I am. Can you do that? Myung-hee's expression grew serious. I will try. What troubles you? Have we destroyed 17 civilizations? Hayrin asked bluntly. Myung-hee was quiet for a long moment. Then she sighed. That is a complicated question, Princess. It shouldn't be, Hayrin said. It's a yes or no question. Have we or haven't we? Destroyed is a strong word, Myung-hee said carefully. We have integrated 17 species into our empire. Whether that constitutes destruction depends on your perspective. From their perspective, Hayrin said, if you ask the Dravik ancestors from 300 years ago if their civilization still exists, what would they say? Myung-hee looked pained. They would probably say no. But Princess, you must understand, integration has brought peace and prosperity to countless beings. The violence of the old Dravik culture, the poverty of the Nithral before we helped them, the chaos of the Korthan democracy. Did we give them a choice? Hayrin interrupted. A real choice? Or did we make it impossible to say no? We never forced anyone, Myung-hee said. That's not the same thing, Hayrin replied. If someone is drowning and you offer to save them on the condition that they give up everything they are, is that really a choice? Or is it coercion disguised as charity? Myung-hee looked tired. I have asked myself these questions for many years, Princess. I don't have good answers. I can tell you that the Velthari have always believed we are helping. We genuinely think we are making the galaxy better. But whether that belief justifies the cost I cannot say, what about humans? He Rin asked. What about integration target 18? Myung-hee's eyes widened. You found the protocol files? Yes. Then you know that humans were supposed to be next, Myung-hee said. And you know that they refused. They are the first species to ever say no to us. The first to see the pattern and choose independence over advancement. Many in the Empire were shocked. Some were angry. But I was relieved. Why? He Rin asked. Because it meant someone finally understood what we were offering, Myung-hee said. And they had the courage to refuse. The humans exposed a truth we have been avoiding for 1,000 years. Our help comes at a price that not everyone should have to pay. He Rin ended the call and sat in the darkness of her quarters. She thought about Tae-sung, about how he had looked at her with such careful distance. She had thought he was being rude or prejudiced or foolish. But he had been protecting himself, protecting his species, protecting his culture from the smiling extinction she represented, and she had threatened him for it. Had given him 3 days to explain himself or face expulsion. She felt ashamed but shame was easier than the larger question now facing her. If everything Tae-sung said was true, if her empire was built on the systematic erasure of other cultures, then what was her role in it? Was she just another tool of integration? Had her entire life been preparation for convincing others to surrender their independence? He Rin made a decision. She would investigate further. She would talk to members of integrated species. She would find out how they truly felt about being part of the Empire. And if she found what she suspected she would find, she would have to choose between loyalty to her empire and loyalty to the truth. It was not a choice she ever expected to face. But Tae-sung had forced her to see what she had been ignoring her entire life. And now that she had seen it, she couldn't look away. 2 weeks passed after Tae-sung's conversation with Princess He Rin. During that time, she disappeared from public view. The other students whispered about it. Some said she was sick. Others said she had returned home to the Valthari homeworld. Tae-sung said nothing, but he wondered if his words had pushed her too far. Then one morning, an announcement appeared on every screen at the academy. Princess He Rin had requested an emergency session of the Academy Council. All students and faculty were required to attend. The meeting would take place in the Grand Assembly Hall, the largest space on the station. Tae-sung felt his stomach drop when he read the message. This was it. She had finished her investigation, and now she was going to expose him publicly. He would be expelled, maybe worse. Earth's relationship with the Coalition might be damaged. Dong-jung grabbed his arm as they walked to the assembly hall. Whatever happens, we've got your back. The other human students, we talked about it. We support you. Tae-sung nodded, too nervous to speak. The Grand Assembly Hall was packed. 5,000 students and faculty members filled the seats, representing every species in the Coalition. At the front of the room, a raised platform held the council members. Representatives from each major species, including Commander Yahan of Earth. Princess He Rin stood alone on the stage. She wore formal royal robes that shimmered in the light, but her face looked tired. She had not been sleeping well. Chancellor Yun-ji, a neutral species called the Trell, who governed the academy, spoke first. Princess He Rin has requested this emergency session under the authority granted to Coalition royalty. We have granted her request. Princess, the floor is yours. He Rin stepped forward to the center of the stage. She looked out at the assembled crowd, and for a moment, her eyes met Tae-sung's. Then she began to speak. I called this meeting because I have discovered something that every being in this hall needs to know. 2 weeks ago, a human student accused my empire of systematic cultural genocide. At the time, I was offended. I was angry. I thought he was lying or misguided. Murmurs spread through the hall. Tae-sung felt everyone's eyes turning toward him. I decided to investigate his claims, Hayrin continued. I used my access to the Imperial Archives to research our history of integration with other species. What I found shocked me. What I found shamed me. And what I found needs to be shared with all of you. She activated a holographic display behind her. Images appeared, showing the 17 species that had integrated into the Velthari Empire. But these weren't the modern images everyone knew. These were historical records, showing these species before integration. This is the Dravik civilization 300 years ago, Hayrin said. They had a warrior culture that lasted 5,000 years. They had traditions, songs, and honor codes that defined their entire existence. Now, ask any Dravik to recite a traditional battle song. They cannot. Their culture has been erased. The image changed to the Neithral. These are the Neithral as they once were. Artists whose light paintings were considered sacred expressions of their deepest beliefs. Now they work in advertising, and their sacred art has become a commercial commodity. Image after image appeared, species after species, each one shown in their prime, and shown as they existed now, absorbed into Velthari culture. For 1,000 years, my empire has approached other species with offers of help, Hayrin said. We have shared technology, education, and resources. We have presented ourselves as generous benefactors who only want to lift others up. And we have genuinely believed this about ourselves. But the truth is that our help comes at a price. Integration into our empire means the slow, systematic erasure of everything that made these species unique. It happens so gradually that nobody notices until it's too late. It happens with such kindness that it feels like a choice. But when the alternative to accepting our help is being left behind in a rapidly advancing galaxy, is it really a choice at all? The hall was completely silent now. Even the council members looked shocked. 40 years ago, my empire approached humanity with the same offer we had made to 17 species before them. Hayrin continued. We expected them to accept gratefully. Instead, they refused. They chose independence over advancement. They chose to struggle alone rather than be absorbed into our empire. At the time, we thought they were being foolish. Now I understand they were being wise.